part 2 of Splintered by A.G. Howard. If you did not see part 1, go and watch it. But the gist of it is, this is A.G. Howard's take on Alice in Wonderland. Alyssa has gone down the rabbit hole and she has met Morpheus, who is the whole reason that she's even here. But what he's telling her is, to break your curse, you have to undo all of the things that Alice did. But before we can get into that, I need to let you know what happened after Alice did everything that she did. It turns out Queen Red is on trial for letting all of this stuff happen. And she's claiming that she was distracted because her husband was having an affair with her stepsister, Grenadine. Grenadine is a really forgetful woman who wears ribbons around her fingers and her toes, and they whisper everything she needs to know to her. So if anybody knows where I can get some of those, I would love to know it. But she's distracted by their betrayal. They pan over to Alice, who has agreed to confess to her crimes in exchange for being returned to her world with no memory of what has happened. The first thing she did was she had stopped the tea party. The second thing she did was she stole the Duchess's fan and gloves. The third thing she did was she cried an ocean. The fourth thing she did was helped the Octopus's friend trick the Octopus out of clams. These are things that you're probably already familiar with because you watched the first part, but just in case we weren't sure, those are the things that Alyssa has to undo, and she has already dried up the lake of Alice's tears. She's also exacted retribution against the Octopus. We're seeing this as a scene like Alyssa and Morpheus are watching this take place. So as Alice is talking, Rabid White grabs the Vorpal sword because Rabid White has vowed allegiance to Queen Red because he had been fed some kind of flesh-eating virus that was eating him from the inside out, and she was able to save him before it got to his face. So he is under her command till death do we part. He cuts her chains with the Vorpal sword. She then kidnaps Alice. Morpheus cannot help Alice because he is already undergoing his metamorphosis, which then will bind him for 75 years. In the midst of all of this, somehow Red also uses the Vorpal sword to sever the Cheshire Cat's head from his body. So he's a creature that can't be killed. However, this Vorpal sword could sever ties between him. Red also takes the body and feeds it to the Bandersnatch, whereas the head goes and finds the twin sister in basically the land of the dead. And the only way to reunite the Cheshire Cat, or Chessie as Morpheus calls him, is to free his body from the Bandersnatch, but the only way he can free the body is with the Vorpal sword, so now we also have to find the Vorpal sword. Somehow Alice had the Vorpal sword, which she apparently gave to the Mad Hatter. One other thing that she had done was left them under some sort of a spell, so they had been frozen for 75 years. Morpheus is having a banquet. I think the real reason for this banquet is to return the fan and the gloves to the Duchess, and so they have to do it covertly. In order to do that, he has this banquet, and one of the Duchess's henchmen, for lack of a better word, is going to deliver something that they will exchange for the fan and gloves so that Alyssa can then go and free their Mad Hatter and then get the Vorpal sword. Before they go to this banquet, however, Morpheus had shown them Queen Ivory in a Jabberlock box, which I'm a little unclear about. Somebody trapped her in this Jabberlock box, and the only way to get her out is an act of true love. However, once somebody changes places, that second person can never get back out of the Jabberlock box. But we need to get Queen Ivory out of the Jabberlock box because there are two portals back to the human realm. One in Queen Red's castle, one in Ivory's castle, but that one is inaccessible as long as Ivory is in this box. Before she even makes it to this banquet, she and Jeb share their first kiss. It is very passionate, it is very heated. Of course, then he and Morpheus have to measure themselves against each other again. They head to the banquet, and she is seated next to a mustela, which is this ferret-like creature that wears basically a baseball helmet on its head. Chaos ensues. She ends up holding this mustela. It licks her, which results in a wish tear. If she had done the wrong thing during all this chaos, it basically would have licked her and killed her. But because she was trustworthy, his lick resulted in a wish tear. Morpheus says, I'll keep this, you don't need it. All you need to know is that it can only service Alyssa, and it can only be her true heart's desire. The card guards in Rabid White crash the party, which leads Alyssa and Jeb running for their lives. They take a mirror to the Mad Hatter's tea party, at which point Jeb lands on her, which pushes her face into a pastry. It is filled with purple berries. At the other end of this table, you find the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and the Dormouse. They are frozen. Alyssa and Jeb have no clue. So what Morpheus had traded for was this really potent pepper. So they're trying to figure out how in the world they're going to use this pepper on these people. Alyssa starts getting hungry. And she gets hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. But then she also has like this insatiable sexual appetite aroused in her. And she gets all sexy for Jeb. And honestly, I was really uncomfortable. I thought it was very out of place. I just don't think Howard did a good job with these romances. They felt very forced. Before I get into that and just go down a road nobody wants us to go down, they realize, oh hey, the Dormouse, his nose isn't actually frozen, because I guess it had been over some tea and the fumes from the tea had melted the ice around his nose. So they use the pepper to make him sneeze, which breaks him out of his ice casing. He helps them to understand that what they need to do in order to unfreeze the others is make the clock go forward, because there was the watch that Alice had stopped. She then uses her finger to make the watch start ticking again, which frees the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. But as they are unfreezing, she has lost her ever-loving mind, and she is trying to catch the Dormouse and eat him. At the very moment that she's got him in her clutches and is gonna put him in her mouth, Mad Hatter, March Hare, somebody is like, yeah, it looks like she ate something she shouldn't have eaten. Now what she needs to do is, because she'd had the juice of this berry, and what she needs to do in order to reverse these effects is to eat whole berries. She eats her fill and she's back to normal, and now they're like, all right, well, what about the sword? And the March Hare and Mad Hatter are like, we do not know what you're talking about. Somebody gave you bad information. At which point Morpheus appears and he's like, yeah, that was me. I didn't know it was wrong. It was kind of a theory I was testing out because I couldn't figure out where else this Vorpal sword could be, but actually I think I know where it is now. The other thing is, like, you know, if it had been me, that sexual awakening of hers would have been realized. It's just gross. Also, Jeb and Alyssa make out again. Inappropriate, but it happened. His other bit of news is that not only did he lose Alice's wish tear, but that the card army stole the Jabberlock box with Ivory in it. Her next step is to reunite Chessie's head with its body, which means she's got to go to the Twin Sisters because that's where the head is. As all good books must have, the card guards reappear. This is when we see Alyssa's amazing skateboarding skills resurface, because they are running away and they come across like the checkerboard desert. And so they're like, yeah, we're just gonna basically sand surf. So they're sand surfing when the checkerboard desert is like, we're not gonna have this. So they lose their momentum, but Alyssa is able to use a flute that Morpheus had given her to call the clams. So the clams come to the rescue. She and Jeb are flying through the air. And of course, this is when she's supposed to do her ollie again, and she can't do it. She loses focus, and they're falling. This is when she realizes she's got wings. So we're realizing she's a Neverling. She is not entirely human, because also Jeb had pointed out that she is sparkly all over, and she has the same weird face painting markings that Morpheus has. She's able to rescue Jeb from certain death, but he's too heavy for her. And I don't know if it's one of those things where with practice she can get stronger, or if wings just aren't meant to support dead weight. She lowers him into this valley, but I guess her wingspan is so great that she herself cannot fit. She leaves him with the promise of coming back. And to me, I thought it was just odd, but she ends up crashing herself and is hauled into Wonderland's Garden of Souls, which is kind of where she needed to be anyways, because this is where the twin sisters live. She meets Sister One, who is the nicer of the two, and she is the one who nurtures the dead. But before Sister One appears, she's in this garden, and she's amongst all of these glowing crystal roses, and she meets Red's spirit. Did anybody know Red was dead? I don't know, but she doesn't recognize that this is Red, even though I, as the reader, definitely realized that this was Queen Red. Red is like, oh wow, you're wearing my pin. Somehow or another, Red escapes from this rose. Alyssa experiences some kind of shock, like her veins are sprouting leaves, and it's more like they're vines than veins. Almost somebody is inhabiting her body, which if you are following where I'm going, you are following where I'm going. And I have no idea how she never even questioned it. Girl didn't even realize Red had left her rose. And I'm like, if it was glowing before and it's not glowing now, why can't we put one and one together to make two? Alyssa was very frustrating. I found she was a very inactive protagonist. Every protagonist, like, you do have their reactionary during the first half of a novel, and then the second half is when they have to be proactive, where they realize what is at stake, they realize what they need to do in order to achieve their goals. And I felt like, for the most part, Alyssa was doing what she was told. She was given every step that she needed to take, and she just sat there and let things happen to her. Everything she did, it was because somebody else prepared her, or somebody else took the action that she went along with. I missed having a strong lead character, especially because she had so much potential. It felt like her purpose was a love story, and then there just happened to be an action story happening around her. This is when Sister One officially arrives. She reveals that she has been plotting with Morpheus, because one thing that he has been in disagreement with the twin sisters over is the fact that he will not give them his dead moths. Take that for what you will. But he has promised her his dead moths if she gives him Chessie's smile. This is when she points out to Alyssa that the queen is gone. All the flowers start freaking out. So they have to sing these flowers back to sleep. And I'm telling you, Sister One, she's got some good information that could really have helped this story along. But I guess in order to keep the story going, Howard felt like she needed to interrupt a moment where we could have gotten information, because Alyssa freaks out and she runs away from Sister One, only to encounter Sister Two, who is much more menacing and accuses her of stealing something. Were we not listening a couple of minutes prior when Sister One said that she stole the smile and that she was going to give it to Morpheus in exchange for his moths? So why is Alyssa sitting here being like, oh, I didn't steal anything? Could she not put 2 and 2 together to get 4? To be like, oh, that's what she means. And be like, no, I didn't steal the smile. Your sister stole this. Like, nothing. None of this. Sister One actually comes to the rescue and is like, hey, I stole the smile because Morpheus said he's going to give us moths. At this point, Alyssa goes back to Sister One's home and they elaborate on what death speak is. We do run into Humpty Dumpty, who is like this bitter old man, and I thought it was kind of stupid, but he does sort of play a part in how all this stuff gets explained. But she elaborates on death speak, saying that the victim, so whoever is dying, utters a death speak to the person that they hold responsible of sort. This death speak accompanies a challenge that the wrong party must meet. And any Netherling who dies under death speak is left with a broken spirit, eternally unhappy and seeking escape until Sister 2 stops it and Morpheus is under a death speak put upon him by Red. I have nothing to say to that. I think the death speak is fascinating. How they got this information, I don't know, but all of a sudden it's there. This is also when Sister One is like, oh, but the king is not a bad guy. He's actually a very sympathetic guy. So now we're getting the idea that all this stuff that Morpheus has fed Alyssa is misinformation. She also said that Grenadine is the one who brought them Chessie's head. And the truth is, apparently, Morpheus, so we don't know how this happened, but Morpheus brought them Red's body. So like we don't know how Red died, but Morpheus brings the twins her body because he was very close to Red. So now it's all looking like a conspiracy. He held a grudge against Alice being in a bird cage because Grenadine lost the ribbon that told them where Alice was hidden. So Alice was hidden for 75 years because nobody remembered where she was because Grenadine lost her ribbon and Morpheus was in a cocoon. Which, if Morpheus was metamorphosizing, how did he know where she ended up? Whatever. We're really not going to go into that. But this is why Alice was in a birdcage for 75 years, and this is why when she was older, she no longer had her birthmark and she remembered nothing, because when Morpheus emerged from his cocoon, he went and he rescued Alice and he had her switch places with Red. Of course, Alyssa is like, how in the world? Like, she could not have been in a birdcage for 75 years because I'm her descendant. Alyssa is really thick, in my opinion. Even bigger picture, so like, I'm telling you, it's a great book. Like, all of the layers of this book are wonderful. I just wish we'd had better characters and better characterizations because I needed Alyssa to question more. I needed her to question Morpheus more instead of she just took him at his word. Whenever Jeb would be like, I don't know about this, she'd be like, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, we need to trust him. We need to do what he says. So I really wish that she had taken some steps back and be like, I don't know about this. In any case, all of this is just a giant chess game. Tests to make Alyssa, or whichever Liddell descendant, the next Red Queen. She has to burst through stone with a feather, cross a forest in one step, hold an ocean in her palm, alter the future with her fingertips, defeat an invisible enemy, trample an army beneath her feet, wake the dead, and then harness the power of a smile. Now she's realizing this was not about breaking her curse. This was not about fixing Alice's messes. This is just helping Morpheus meet his own ends. This was also the criteria written after Grenadine took the throne and the king heard that Red had escaped Wonderland and had remarried because he feared one of her female descendants coming back and taking over the throne. So essentially with, I think they said something, I think Howard put something in here with like Morpheus's help. Somehow Morpheus manipulates this to to achieve what he wants to achieve. But these are 8 impossible tests to prove her worth. All along, Alice has been remembering some kind of lullaby that Morpheus had sung to her bit by bit by bit. So this is the point where she finally remembers the very end. And it says, "Little blossom in white and red, resting now your tiny head, grow and thrive, be strong and keen, for you will one day be their queen. Little blossom in peach and gray, grew up strong and found your way. 2 things more yet to be seen, until at last you'll be their queen." All of that comes down to the fact that he wants Alyssa on the throne. And now Alyssa is like, oh, well, also, Jeb. Like, this whole time, we've absolutely 100% completely forgotten about Jeb. In my opinion, I think we had too much romance. We needed to pare it down, really just keep it about all this wonderful, fantastical Wonderland stuff. Maybe Morpheus is her love interest, or maybe Jeb is her love interest. We did not need to, and since we're spreading it across 3 novels, maybe it could have been more of a slow burn. She's like, oh, I've got to get to Jeb, and Sister 1 is like, oh, okay, yeah, well, Jeb is imprisoned in Red Castle, so hey, go through the mirror, but don't forget Chessie's smile, which is contained in a teddy bear. More spoilers. It's all kind of confusing. Who's with who? Who's really to blame? Who's orchestrating everything? But Red is Alyssa's ancestor, not Alice. Rabid White is in league with Morpheus, and Morpheus never lost Alice's wish. He's had it the entire time. Like I said, Morpheus had gotten Red to switch places with Alice, but then Red immediately goes back on her decision because she does not want to leave her family. She wants to bring them all into Wonderland so she can take back her throne. She and Morpheus fight. He inadvertently kills her. So this is how he ends up with her body and brings it to the twin sisters. In the end, the Death Speak was all about him. It still had nothing to do with Alice. Alice was just his pawn. Alice, because, it's all about her virginity and her sexual awakening, she's like, okay, the only way that I'm going to be able to get that wish is if I kiss him. And we all know what happens when she kisses him. The exact opposite. It's like he puts this spell on her and she just can't stop kissing him, and she basically is like, I could never live without him. It's just disgusting. It's gross. I don't really like it. He knew what she was planning, so he, with a sleight of hand, had moved this wish so she doesn't even get the wish. But it was just like, okay, Jeb, Morpheus, make up your... It's worse than Twilight, honestly. He then tells her the only way to fulfill his death wish and to free Jeb is for her to be crowned. Because they can't free the Smile without the Vorpal Sword, because a child's toy is the most binding sort of magic. I'm telling you, if you're as confused as I am, it's because the end of this book was utterly exhausting. I felt like there were 3 or 4 false endings, and we needed to choose one. Here is our first ending. In order for Alyssa to be crowned, she has to defeat the Bandersnatch. For some reason, Morpheus and all these card guards, because it seems like all the Reds are aligned with Morpheus at this point, they all go and they're helping her defeat the Bandersnatch. And by they, I mean Morpheus. Like, the card guards kind of stand around the perimeter. The Bandersnatch is chained in this room, and he can only go a certain distance. In the middle of this room is the Red Crown and the Vorpal Sword. They're able to get the Vorpal Sword and cut open the teddy bear. But of course the Smile does not initially come out. So they're still fighting the Bandersnatch, waiting for the Smile to come out and reunite with its body. The Bandersnatch captured Morpheus and is about to eat him when he uses the Vorpal Sword to cut off the Bandersnatch's tongue. Chessie reunites his 2 halves, turns into a cello, because one thing that Alyssa can do is play the cello, and then she also has a cello bow. She plays him, which then puts the Bandersnatch to sleep. Chessie is like, good to go? I'm out of here. Alyssa declares that she loves Morpheus, even though she actually hates, Morpheus declares that he loves her. She tells him that she hates him, but she actually loves him, and we all know it, and she knows it too. And the only way that she can actually free herself is that she has to wish to be free of Red's influence forever. However, as Morpheus is telling her this, he will not meet her gaze, which I know that is something that Howard put in for us to register, but Alyssa, can't she register that too? That he can't even meet her eyes when he's talking to her? We know the first sign of lying is being unable to look you in the eye. She's just so ignorant. I can't stand it. He crowns her just as the guards rush in, because of course, he knows that she would prefer to be crowned in private, so he crowns her, the guards rush in, as well as Ivory. It's heavily implied that Morpheus had a sexual relationship with Ivory, and if not an actual physical relationship, he led her on and they had some sort of relationship to make her think that he cared about her. So he fed her all of these lies. He's the one who trapped her in the Jabberlock box. Gossamer, who is this little pixie sprite character who she and all of her other little pixie sprites are kind of Morpheus's minions. She knew Morpheus's plan all along, but of course she was under Morpheus's spell as well. Apparently he had rescued her from something. I don't know what that is, but she was loyal to him, so she felt bad about revealing this plan. However, she does reveal the plan to the Reds, and what she said is that he wants to repeat what happened with Alice. I'm a little confused at this point, but that is what the book says. That is what I wrote in my notes. We can all be confused together. Ivory is out of the box because I think Gossamer told it to Jeb. There's kind of two alternates here. She told it to Jeb. Jeb, using his love for Alyssa, entered the box instead. So that is false ending number 2. What Morpheus has done was he had tricked Ivory into the box, and then he had framed the king and turned Ivory's court against the Reds to close Ivory's portal so that she would stay captive until he could complete his plan. Yo, I'm so glad I wrote all of this down. I'm massively confused. There's far too much going on here. I think if we had left it with Alice being crowned and maybe the card guards bursting in, that would have been a fine place to stop and then start somewhere else in a new book. Another unrevealed stipulation of the Death Speak is that he would prevent Alice from leaving, I wrote a question here, which was like, what was his plan gonna be? Because all of this is to bring Red back to power. So can Red be in power if Alice is queen? Does that mean that Jeb was then going to trap Alice in a Jabberlock box? This then points to the fact that Jeb sat her next to that little ferret creature so that they would have this wish as a backup, because Alyssa had to be crowned. So then Alice decides, I'm going to use my wish to send Jeb back. I'm going to wish that Jeb never came after me. Which my next question is, if Jeb never came with you, aren't we creating a paradox? Because he helped you accomplish some of these tasks. And it's not that you're wishing that he wasn't here now. You're wishing that he was never here in the first place. You never would have crossed that forest of mutinous zombie flowers. You never would have skated over the desert in a single bound if it had not been for Jeb. Jeb was the one who said, oh hey, if I break apart this table, I can use that as a skateboard. There's so many things that wouldn't have happened if Jeb hadn't been there. But does any of that revert back? No. So plot holes here. Now that she has sent Jeb back, it means that King Red is in the box because he used his love for somebody. I don't know, his love for his kingdom maybe, I forget, to go to free Ivory. So now he is in the box. And if you guys had not guessed this, Red was inhabiting Alyssa's hair barrette the entire time because it had been Red's, like I said. Yeah, so this is number 3 false ending in my opinion. What she does is she's like, ha ha ha, so she inhabits Alyssa. Red's ultimate goal was to inhabit the throne inside of Alyssa. It's just so convoluted. And she's like, yeah, Morpheus, you can still have her body. Alyssa's like, well, you could never have my mind. You could never have my heart. And I'm like, yeah, all of your actions and behaviors and thoughts, I just don't jive with that. I don't feel like you could ever really keep yourself back from him. Morpheus pretends to leave, but then ends up saving her with the Vorpal sword because he severs Alyssa from Red's vines. Earlier I'd said it felt like her veins turned into vines. Like I cannot actually picture all of this. So if you can't either, don't worry. But Red was using Alyssa's body. She was using, like, turning her veins into vines. Things were growing out of her. I don't get it. But this is how Morpheus severs the ties. So, as I said, that is false ending number, I think I said 4. He says that he was acting when he left because he knew what Alyssa needed was to be angry. And so she would be angry enough at him for abandoning her to fight against Red. He then heals Alyssa with their birthmarks. But that's not all, because what happens next? Red inhabits the Bandersnatch. I've had enough at this point. I really have. Like, can we just finish? I understand a climactic ending. I understand unexpected things happening and keeping it exciting. But this was overkill. I think she lost me. Where did she lose me? She probably lost me right around the time that Alyssa was with the Twids and, like, finishing with the Twids and coming to rescue Jeb. It was an exciting book, but it was also a little bit mundane and floated along until about this point. She swallows Morpheus and escapes into the wild, and that is the official end. And of course, Alyssa, who hates him and who would never let him have her heart, mourns his death. But she returns to the mortal realm where she ends up going to visit her mother and be like, hey, everything's good to go. I ended the curse. We are fine. Her mother makes a miraculous recovery and is on her way home. Alyssa and Jeb get together, and Jeb has no memory, but Alyssa, because she's his muse, and even though he doesn't remember anything, obviously, like, he gets her and he can see into her soul because he can paint her exactly as she is in Netherling form. But they are together. He apparently had broken up with Taylor. I mean, at the very beginning when he jumped through the rabbit hole, he'd already broken up with Taylor. But then he broke up with Taylor for real in this reality in the limo. Actually, I think they'd been broken up earlier than that, but neither here nor there. Then her dad is like, I saw this giant moth in one of your traps. You might want to go check it out. And Alyssa's like, no way. Yes, it's Morpheus. And he still had the Vorpal sword, but apparently the Bandersnatch, his hide is tougher than his inside, so he was able to cut his way out. Do we know where Red is? No, but he's safe and sound, and she, like, kisses him in a certain, like, kisses the little jewels that are on his face, and I'm like, girl, you have a boyfriend. You need to lay off of Morpheus. Like, this PDA, I don't think Jeb would be too happy about. But that's where this back and forth with this love triangle, it was very frustrating, and I'd had enough. Morpheus reveals that he had, I guess upon releasing himself from the Bandersnatch, gone back in time, fixed her dad's chair so she never tore it apart, and also returned Taylor's money before anybody knew it was gone. Because Jeb, at the very beginning when he'd come to the house, had accused her of stealing the money. And then throughout, like, later in the novel, he found the money and he was like, oh, I thought you said you didn't take it. So it was a point of contention, but Morpheus, because apparently he does have a heart of gold, he set things right so nobody would suspect anything. And that's all I have to say about that. And we're going to leave it here because I'm so over this book. But if you do have questions, you know where to find me.